Hello my fellow working class heroes, good day. I am Carlo and welcome to Carlo Excels. In this episode, we're going to learn about how to create templates that are immune to cut and paste errors. Alright, let's get right down to it. What you can see on the screen right now is a very simple template which seeks to combine written work, performance tasks, quarterly assessments into the initial quarter grade, and then finally transmutes the initial grade. So we have here column for the student's last names and then columns or rather cells in which you can put in written work, performance task grades or quarterly assessment grades for each student. So say for example, you are the one who created this very simple template for your fellow teachers or for somebody else to use, and then you give them this file for them to use on their own. So for template writers out there, especially when you're the designated template writer for your school, this may be an error or this may be a problem that you have encountered before. So say for example, we have the student Abby over here. So the teacher or the teacher who receives your template and is about to use it enters written work, performance task, and quarterly assessment grade. So for example, he enters 76 over here. Then you have an 85 for the performance task. And let's say this student failed the quarterly assessment, so 74. So you have an initial grade of 80. Then you have a transmitted grade of 87. Now, there are times or there are cases when this teacher suddenly realized that, I entered the wrong grades on the wrong student. So what they're going to do is they're going to take these values over here and then they're going to use the cut mechanic. Now, we already discussed the properties of the cut mechanic in a previous video in Carlo Excels. I'm gonna put in the description in the link down below. So for example, this teacher performs cut and then pastes it onto the correct student. For example, from Abby to Alvarado, like this. Now, when this happens, naturally, the teacher goes to the template creator and says to the template creator, something's wrong with your template because I am getting reference errors in some places and the grades do not seem to point to the right student because in this case, we already transferred the grades to Alvarado over here, but the initial and transmitted grades are still with Abby. And then Alvarado has reference errors for their initial and transmitted grade. As a template writer, you should already know that the reason why this happened is because the teacher used cut and paste. Once again, we already discussed the properties of cut and paste. When you cut cells that are pointed to by formulas, this also transfers the formulas to the new location. It does not stick with the old location. So that is because, or rather that is why, these cells over here, which are supposed to calculate from these cells, are now calculating from these cells right here because the teacher performed cut and paste. So naturally, what we tell our teachers when we distribute our templates is, please do not use cut and paste. If you are to transfer grades from one student to another, please use copy and paste. So what you should do, or what they should do, you tell them is to copy this, paste this over here, and then take these cells over here and then right click to clear contents. Or they could simply right click and then just press the delete key on their keyboard like this. This would have been the proper way of transferring the grades. Unfortunately, no matter how many times we tell our fellow teachers to not perform cut and paste, it still happens. It's unavoidable, especially for those who are not very technologically savvy. So how exactly can we create templates for our fellow teachers that are immune to cut and paste? The solution to creating a template that is immune to cut and paste is a combination of a lot of the different lessons that we already learned here in Carlo Excels. First of all, there is the proper locking and unlocking of cells, the use of the index function. We're also going to take advantage of the advantages of the array function, and then we're going to hide the cells that are going to be concerned about this later on. So stick around and you will find out how to make your templates immune to cut and paste. So before I start, please know that there are many approaches to a situation like this. And what I'm about to tell you or what I'm about to teach in this particular video is just one of them. It's not probably even the best solution, but it is the solution that I know, and it is the solution we're going to talk about for today. So let's first examine this template. So you can see in this template is currently locked, so there are parts of it that you cannot edit. Oh, by the way, if you do not know yet how to protect or lock worksheets, once again, I have a video of that already here in Carlo Excels. You'll find the link down below. So some cells are locked, and these ones, these over here, these cells, the one for the names and the grades, these cells over here are the only ones that are unlocked like this. So these can be edited, while all of the others outside this particular table cannot be edited. So we're going to make changes to this sheet. Of course, first step is to first unlock the sheet. So let's unprotect the sheet first. Next, what we're gonna do is we're going to take this particular table over here, and then we're going to create a copy of the table somewhere else. So for the purposes of this lesson, I'm just going to create this table right beside the current table. This table right now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns and exactly 201 rows. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another table with, first of all, with 6 columns and 201 rows. So we're going to create it right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. And then we're going to have 201 rows like this. When you create this new table, please be sure, remember this, please be sure to make one column, an additional column above, and an additional column to the left. Left. Again, one additional column to the above and an additional column to the left, alright? So again, we're going to create a chart or table of 6 columns and then 6 columns and then 201 rows. So let's add an additional row here and an additional column here. So additional row, additional column. So we have our 6 columns here, and then we have our 201 rows like so. Now let's mark that with lines or borders, and then we can proceed. Next, we create header rows or header columns. Headers in terms of rows will be the one that's above, like this. So this one above, let's mark that down. And then for the header column, it's the leftmost one, the one I asked you to create. And let's mark that down with lines as well. What you're supposed to do with these header rows and header columns is you're supposed to do a countdown of numbers from 1 all the way to how many rows or columns you have. So for example, for the header row, for header column, so we put in here a countdown of 1, 2, and then we finish this countdown all the way to the number of columns we have. In this case, we have 6. Let's beautify that so it's easier to see. And then let's create the same countdown for the rows. Oops, we missed one over here, like this. So let's create one for the rows. So 1, 2, 3, and then let's drag that down over here so that we create a countdown from 1 all the way to 201. Let's beautify that a bit, like so, and then we're ready for the next step. Next, what we want to do is we want to transfer all of the data that you find here on this chart here or table here, and then we want to transfer it to the new table that we created, and we're going to use the index function for that. We're going to do this very quickly, very easily using the index function because we created header rows and header columns. So let's do just that. So we put in here the index function. By the way, we already have a lesson on the index function. Please check the descriptions down below for the Carlo Excels lesson of the index function. So the index function, first we're looking for the array. So this is the array that we wish to create over here. And then the row number. So the row number that we want to point to is the row number to the left of this cell over here. Alright? And the column number is the column number over here. So that would be the index function. Now, because we're planning to eventually take this index function and copy paste it all the way down, so what we're gonna do is this is going to be I'm gonna use this part. This is going to be an absolute reference. Oh, by the way, we have a lesson on absolute references. You can find the link in the descriptions down below. So that will be absolute reference. In this case, this is row number, and we want only the column to be absolute. So absolute reference before the H over here. In this case, this is the row, so we only want the row to be absolute. So absolute reference is going to be over here. And then we press enter. Now you will notice when we press enter, we did it correctly because index function of row 1 and column 1. In this particular table here, this particular table right here, column 1 and row 1 is pertaining to student, and that is why we have student over here. Now, we take this formula that we did, hopefully it's now correct, and then paste it all the way down here. So what we did is, using the index function, we have essentially copied this whole chart here to here. Next, in this new chart, of course, you will notice that the initial grade in transmuted grade is not supposed to be 0 and 60. So let's remove those calculations here. Now, the initial grade, we're going to do a calculation of the initial grade, but we're not going to perform the calculation for initial grade in the original cells. We're going to perform the calculation of the initial grade here on the new cells that we created. So thankfully, we already have the formula for the initial grade over here. So we're just going to copy that and then paste that over here. Let's just copy the formulas. Right. So this cell, or rather this formula, now points to these particular cells. So we have here 25% of whatever number is here, 50% of whatever number is here, and 25% of whatever number is here. So that would be the initial grade. Next, let's transfer the transmuted grade. So this is the transmutation formula without VLOOKUPs. By the way, if you do not know yet how to do this, once again, I already have a lesson here in Carlo Excels regarding transmutation of grades without VLOOKUPs or HLOOKUPs or index matches. You'll find the link in the description down below. So let's copy that. Once again, the transmutation here should point to this chart over here, not this chart over here. So transmuted, let's take this formula and then copy it over here. So you will notice now that this calculates from here and this calculates from here. Now let's copy those formulas, paste it all the way down there, and now it's almost ready to go. Next, this now does the job of these. So in other words, you don't have to calculate from here. Let's delete all of these, right, like so. And then what you essentially do is, instead of calculating in this particular cell, you use this as a cell reference pointing to here. Alright? So this is where the calculation happens, and this only displays what the calculation was in this cell. Alright? So at the same time, this also points to this. And of course, we copy that, paste that all the way down there, and of course the relative references follow. Now it's almost complete. Now let's see if this works. So Abby, let's say for example, Abby has a grade of 74 and then 85, and then let's say once again have a good grade in quarterly assessment, so 96. So Abby now has a transmuted grade of 90. So let's see what happens when we take this grade and we cut it to Alvarado. Now you will notice now that you don't have an error anymore, and the grades have now properly transferred to Alvarado. Of course, teachers who are template writers are probably wondering, how did that happen? What sorcery is this? Well, we already discussed this on our lesson regarding arrays, right? When arrays are used, sometimes, depending on how you manipulate arrays, you can make arrays completely immune to cut and paste. So what you're essentially doing is, you're creating the index function to force an array style of record keeping over here. Because you convert all of these into array, into functions that use an array, this table over here in return becomes immune to cut and paste. So we can transfer that, paste that somewhere, still immune to cut and paste. We can even make this immune to cut and paste over here. So you will notice now that everything now works as it should as far as the calculations for initial and transmitted grades are concerned. So because we're taking advantage of the advantages of array formulas by using the index function and doing the calculation in a separate place, we can make this sheet or this particular chart, the chart that the teachers are going to use in the first place, immune to cut and paste. Of course, some of you are thinking, but this is ugly. I do not want this. I do not want this method because this is ugly. You have all of these extra formulas over here. Well, you can simply just highlight these columns and then hide them from view. Now, this will be ready to give to your fellow teachers. So all you will have to do, of course, is to make sure that everything is now locked and hidden. And then you unlock and unhide all of the cells that you need the teachers to use. And then afterwards, you may now simply protect the sheet like this. Now you have a sheet, now you have a template that you can distribute to your fellow teachers, and this sheet is now immune to cut and paste. So, take this data, transfer it over here, and no error is happening, and the initial grade and transmitted grade, or rather the calculations, are where they should be. So that's it for our lesson on creating Excel sheets or templates that are immune to cut and paste. I hope I earned your subscription today. Once again, I am Carlo, and this is Carlo Excels. Thank you very much for watching.